Let's talk about some of the action, shall we, Justin? From the past few days, we've had a handful of championship games as well as all the transfer news from deadline day, which we'll get onto later on. But we'll start off with Leeds United, who have gone 5 points clear at the top of the championship after a 2-0 win away at Coventry on Wednesday night. It is only Leeds' 5th win in their last 12 away games. So they have had a few problems on their travels. And based off this, it looks like they're now even sorting that out, Justin, because, look, they've gone to Coventry, who have had 4 wins on the bounce. They've been playing really well recently. Their fans have been buzzing and probably fancy their chances of getting something here. And Leeds have gone there and dealt with them very easily.
Yeah, very easily. It was a dominant display. It felt like it just felt like it was attack after attack after attack. It was relentless from Leeds, and the way they controlled the game in and out of possession was really, really positive. And Coventry didn't really have an answer for much of what Leeds were asking. It was a really, really, I wouldn't say coming of age performance, but this felt like the team that we're hopefully going to see for the rest of the season. Confident performance. Individuals were on it. It was calm. Despite them, I think going 2-0 up in the first half, I think just allowed Leeds to express themselves. We've not really seen that often enough this season, where Leeds have become the team that are confident, or there's no sort of anxiety settling into the performance from the fans. It was just a very, very simple, confident, calm win for Daniel Farke's boys.
Yeah, I think for me, this win feels significant because it feels like a corner has been turned. In some ways, I would go as far to say that this win is even more impressive than the 7-0 thrashing at the weekend, because Coventry have been one of the teams you would least like to face right now, haven't they? And Leeds have just turned them over with very little fuss. Scored the 2 goals early on and probably should have won by more. I know I've talked a lot this season about what gear Leeds are in. It's been something I've mentioned relentlessly, but watching this, I would find it hard to argue that this was them moving out of the top gear that they found at the weekend, because they were top class once again. They controlled the game brilliantly, better in every department, and they seem to have really found their groove. And if we're just about to see the best of Leeds this season, then that's pretty much game over for the title race, isn't it? I wonder if we might even be about to see a sort of similar form that Leeds showed around the turn of the year last year, because they won 41 points from 45 in that crazy run of form. But I think we're seeing some similar similarities to that, Justin, because they were a bit inconsistent with their away performances earlier on in the season. And judging by this, that looks to have changed.
Yeah, well, I think I was saying it last at the weekend, in that Daniel Farke's teams do peak in the second half of the season. We've seen that repeatedly with his Norwich teams, and obviously with his Leeds team last year. And I think we're going to see the same this year. I think when you look at the team now, I think the midfield balance that they've got, that they've struck, is near perfect. When you consider the likes of Jayden Bogle and Junior Firpo, we're settling into the team together once again. Ayo Tanaka, I think what he adds in midfield is it almost feels like an extra pair of legs. Brendan Harrison's coming into his own. Gruev's back fit and firing. There's a really nice balance to that midfield, and I think that allows Leeds and the wing backs to really attack opposition, which we didn't really have before. I think Sam Byram did a really good job of deputising for Firpo, but that double hinged attack, if you like, of Bogle and Firpo in those wide areas just gives them a completely new dimension, and gives opposition fans, something for them to be scared about, but opposition players something else for them to think about as well, which I don't think we really had before. I'm not saying it's all down to Firpo, but subtle changes, players coming into form, is really helping Farke. And I think the last 2 performances, we're seeing that. They created 6 big chances against Coventry. As I said, it was relentless. The shot count was really impressive. And like you said, it just feels like Leeds are starting to find their groove. And I think once they do, it's a very difficult thing to stop. And maybe this runaway train is, it's I wouldn't say out of control. I think it's a controlled out of control from Leeds.
A controlled out of control.
Yeah. Okay. I think out of control, people might assume it's a bad thing, but I think Leeds being out of control in this context is them just putting away teams. No one can stop them, sort of thing. It's scary stuff.
I'm not sure controlled out of control makes sense, but I take your point because you are right. Leeds is, all the players just seem to have come into form at once, and one player in particular who really seems to have hit form is Manor Solomon. Justin, I really, really wanted to highlight him. Of course, he was one of the marquee signings of the summer across the whole of the Championship. Has had a good season, not an outstanding one, not a bad one either, but a good one, I would say. In recent weeks, though, he has started to show the sort of form which we feared he might do when he first joined, because he has been top class recently, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's really stepped up. He's got 6 goal contributions in his last 7 games. That's a really good return. But his displays, they're really direct. They really, really are direct. And I think when you've got a player who, is confident, is finding his feet, is finding his form, and he's executing his plays as well as Manor Solomon is on a game by game basis now, it's really, really impressive. I think all it does is just highlight the strength that Leeds have, because you've got Larger Ramazani, Wilfred Nonto can't get into the team. Daniel James is in there as well. Obviously, Joel Pirro got a goal. He took his goal really well here as well. So, yeah, the several pronged attack that Leeds have got is tipped by Manor Solomon in form. And when you've got wide players in form that are as good as him, and we know who can hit the heights that he can, it's we're seeing the pudding, if you like. It's really, really, really positive.
The pudding.
The proof. We always say proof is in the pudding.
Proof is in the pudding.
I didn't want to say the whole thing, so we're seeing the pudding. Everyone wants to see the pudding.
Yes, I'm glad we are seeing the pudding finally. But I mean, what a pudding he's turning out to be. Because, I don't know how he didn't get about 50 assists against Coventry. He just kept dribbling past players and then putting it on a plate for someone to spoon it over the bar. But we've started to see recently why he was one of the most sought after players in the whole of Europe not too long ago. Because when on form, he is simply unplayable, scarily good. Really. So, look, it has taken a while for him to show why he was so highly rated, because while he was playing well before, he definitely wasn't showing these levels, but we are definitely seeing that now. And so he could be the main driver for Leeds going forwards for the remainder of the season, sort of like what Crescencio Somerville was doing last season, just constantly tearing teams apart. And this has been a bit frightening how good he's been recently. I'm not too sure how to judge this game from a Coventry perspective, Justin. They were a distant second best, which is perhaps surprising considering how good they've been recently. But on the other hand, it is Leeds. Frank Lampard had an interesting night, though. He was the target of chants from Leeds fans all night. And after the game, he appeared to cup his ear at the away fans and make a scoreline gesture in reference to when his Derby team beat them 4-2 in the playoffs 6 years ago. After the game, he was asked about it and he said, "I don't want to talk about that." What do you think about all that, Justin?
I just try to bait me for a response here, and the Coventry fans are going to try to think that I'm baiting them for a response. But I think it's all fun in games. Maybe Lampard's taking it a bit too serious. I think, he's going to get abuse from the Leeds fans. There's a bit of history there. There's a bit of needle. He didn't need to respond and give them fuel, did he? He didn't need to do that. And he's done that, and now he's become a meme again. It's just something that he probably should have avoided. But like I said, his Coventry team lost 2-0 very comfortably, much like most of his Derby teams did that season, other than that 4-2 win. So, I think it was a bit of an overreaction from Lampard. But as long as the abuse doesn't step over the line from the Leeds fans, I'm sure we can have a bit of fun in games with it.
Yeah, considering we're talking about a man here who got called fat for the majority of his career, you'd have thought a now 46 Frank Lampard would not get as rattled as easily as he seemingly does, but it doesn't seem to take much, does it? I don't think it's a great look, because maybe he's just frustrated at how easily beaten his side were, because they were a distant second best to Leeds. But still, if it's a Pep Guardiola or Jose Mourinho doing these kind of gestures, then fine, because they've got enough of a managerial CV to justify it. But when it's Frank Lampard, whose managerial career peaked 6 years ago, and he's still referencing a scoreline from 6 years ago. It's a bit embarrassing, I think. So, yeah, maybe not his finest moments, but look, Coventry have been in good form recently, and this was a minor setback, hopefully. Both these teams have got FA Cup action this weekend. Coventry next back in Championship action against QPR in midweek next week. Leeds have got Watford away. So it'll be interesting to see how these two get on in those two games. Let's go to Burnley, who have moved up to second after a 1-0 win over Oxford on Tuesday night, and Mikael Hellick own goal being the difference between the two sides. This was Burnley's first home goal in over 5.5 hours of football. And even then, it was an own goal, Justin. I think they played well in the first half, in fairness, had some good chances, and one of their own players probably should have scored at least one. But then that second half was the same old Burnley, Justin. A really, really turgid watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess. I think Oxford, okay, the way I look at it is Oxford, I don't think they offered a hell of a lot. They didn't offer a hell of a lot, and they should have been at least, I would say at least 3-0 ahead going into the second half. That being said, they could have easily been 4 or 5-0 ahead going into the second half. This was a really, really dominant first half, and I think rather than sort of dwell on that second half and say that was as boring as you could possibly watch and get, gross, poker ball, I can't deal with it anymore. I want to focus on the first half and talk about how positive that was, because that was a really, really positive turn for the Bucks. You know, Jadon Anthony was brilliant. Ian Fleming got into some really good positions. Lyle Foster should have scored a couple. So yeah, I could sit here and say, yes, it's same old boring Burnley, but first half fills me with a lot of joy, a lot of confidence that maybe if they take their chances, that could have been a much more interesting game from their perspective. Actually, is a 5-0 win just as boring as a 1-0 win?
I mean, this 1-0 win was very boring. So, if you talk about this 1-0 win, then I would say yes. But maybe I'm focusing on the second half, Justin, because it's the one that was the most recent in my memory, and just having to sit through that was a real pain. Considering one team was in the Premier League last season, the other was in League One, it would have been quite hard to guess who was the Premier League team in that second half. It was grim. To give Burnley credit, they killed the game off, as they so often do, because Oxford didn't really cause too many problems at all. But comparing that second half to Dishwater would be doing Dishwater a disservice. And we've spoken about how unexciting Burnley are on Sunday, Justin. If you ignore the 5-0 spanking at Plymouth, 7 of Burnley's last 8 games have seen just 2 goals in them for either side. So we genuinely could be looking at the least thrilling promotion of all time, couldn't we? Whether they actually go up is another question, but if they do, it must feel a bit meh getting promoted in this way, mustn't it?
I mean, yeah, I think asking a Burnley fan their perspective on that would be quite interesting, because yes, this isn't a sexy promotion win. There's no thrill here for Burnley, because they are drawing a lot of games, they are keeping a lot of clean sheets, and I think, you know, maybe if promotion wasn't, you know, a case and they were down in the Championship for a few years, and maybe it would feel a little bit better because they were in the Premier League just last year. That promotion sweetness probably takes away from it a little bit, and maybe puts the spotlight on a little bit more of a boring take on things with this kind of play. But look, I think, you know, with Scott Parker, when you look at his, I mean, just a starting 11, for example, there's no natural striker in that team. That's I think that's a little bit problematic. I think Ian Fleming does lead the line really well, but he's not a natural forward. I think if they've got one in there who's a very capable finisher,
they've got Lath Foster, haven't they? But he's playing on the left wing.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's not as straightforward as that. And he did get into some good goal scoring positions. But I think if we put a Burnley side who are taking their chances into the mix, then maybe we have a very different perspective. I think that's all I'll say on that. But yeah, it's not a fun promotion race from a Burnley perspective. But that being said, promotion's promotion at the end of the day, and that's all the investors care about, right? That's what they care about. They just want to be in the top flight. They don't care how it comes.
I'm more curious about what the fans think of it, to be honest. I think the real victims here, though, Justin, are you and I, because we're the ones who have to go back and watch Burnley games, even though we know the exact same thing.
We don't have to pay for a season ticket
every week. We don't have to pay for a season ticket. You're absolutely right, but no one ever thinks about us, Justin, the hard done to podcasters. But I think I would actually want to put the question out there to Burnley fans. What do you think to Scott Parker? Because they were warned by Fulham and Bournemouth fans about him. But even then, this is a pretty extreme example of what Parker ball is like. He has gone full Parker this season, hasn't he? And considering Burnley last got promoted, watching Vincent Kompany, this lovely, entertaining, attacking football, it must be hard watching this. And if Burnley do get promoted, do fans really feel like they have a connection to this team? Because fans must genuinely be going to games dreading what's about to come, because it's so dull. And we're talking about a team who's second in the table, Justin. Yeah. Would you really be that excited to go watch this team? I'm not sure you would be.
Well, maybe. Yeah. I find this a really difficult thing to pinpoint, mainly because I'm not a Burnley fan. So I think emotively, it's very hard for me to sit there and go, I'm bored by this. I want to see more. It's that constant conversation that I think a lot of fans have is it substance or is it style? You want your team to go up, or do you want to see them playing beautiful football? What's the difference? What's the most important thing here? I think Burnley and their state of play, for them, it's just about getting back into the Premier League. Don't get me wrong; they can do it a little bit in a bit more of an interesting way. But at the end of the day, promotion is promotion. That's one argument. I think the other argument, I think this is an important one. I think they've got a squad capable enough of getting a little bit more out of their attack. I think that's a really important thing. I don't think Scott Parker's quite tapping into the potential that he's got at his feet here.
We've been saying that all season, haven't we, Justin?
We have.
We're not coming up with any new theories here, are we? So yeah, you're absolutely right on that. There was no debut for Marcus Edwards in this one. Hasn't played a huge amount of minutes this season, so I imagine Scott Parker will want to ease him into things. But do we think there'll be a bit more excitement when he comes into the team, Justin?
I mean, if you look at how good Jadon Anthony is at the moment, his form's really, really good. He's probably the shining light in what is a very dull side. Even
then, we're not exactly seeing flair players, stand out in this Burnley team.
No, but I think when he gets the ball, it excites me. Against Oxford, he was brilliant. So if you add Marcus Edwards into the mix, maybe he can do the same. Maybe you can move Lyle Foster into a central position, drop Zian Fleming into that number 10, and you've got a very, very interesting attack there. I think there's the other side of the coin. Maybe Scott Parker's just not felt he's got the capable of wide players to really milk out what he wants. But I think there's still a lot of question marks for this Burnley team. I think what you can say is I think I've seen a lot of development from individuals. James Trafford's really come on. CJ Egan-Riley has been brilliant. Bashir Humphries has been brilliant. Jadon Anthony has found his form again. So, whilst we can sit here and go, pocket ball is boring, development of players is also happening as well. So that's the other side of the coin again.
Yeah. Defensive players are developing. I'm not sure about the attacking players. But this was Oxford's first loss under Guy Rowett. They've had a bit of a winless run recently. Did get those back-to-back wins, didn't they? But now it's 3 wins without a win for them after previously being a steam train. They've got a big game away at Derby next Tuesday, which is a big, big game down at the bottom of the table. QPR, they got back to winning ways after coming from a goal down to beat Blackburn 2-1. And what a result for Marty Cifuentes' side this was, Justin.
Yeah, it's their 6th win out of their last 7 home games. It's just the turnaround's incredible because they failed to win their first 9 home games, and now they seem to just unable to stop winning at Lath Road. It's an incredible turnaround. But again, it's just another highlight of how good they are. They stayed in the game for as long as possible. It wasn't their best performance, I don't think, because I think Blackburn, if they're a little bit more clinical, maybe could have come away with something. But I think that character to see the game through wasn't there. And again, I think when you compare this QPR team to what we saw at the very start of the season, it's so different. And I think one player I want to highlight is Michael Fry. I think his presence has really helped. He's an outlet. He's a folly. He's very effective in the box. Did you see that touch as well? That QPR, that highlight that QPR put out was just filthy. Again, it's something that should come with an age warning, an age consent warning. It was incredible. Oh.
I think it's a good reminder of just how good professional footballers are when you've got someone like him taking that touch and then doing some keepy uppies. It's absolutely obscene. Go on the second tier Twitter if you've not seen it already. It's just outrageous. But yeah, QPR looked much improved here. I thought Elias Chair had one of his best games of the season. He was really, really good. And overall, just a really, really good win for Rangers. There was a shout for handball in the build-up to the QPR winner, which I wasn't entirely sure about, mainly because I haven't seen enough replays of it. I might be completely wrong on that one, but it didn't look like an obvious handball to me. As I say, might be wrong on that. But yeah, another good win for QPR. They are only 3 points off the top six once again, Justin, which leaves them well in the hunt for a playoff place, doesn't it? And they've got a tricky game coming up next Tuesday away at Coventry, which is a meeting of two of the more informed teams of 2025, isn't it? So that's going to be a really fascinating one. One team not in form, though, Justin, is Blackburn. It's now 4 losses in 5 for them. They're really finding themselves in a rocky patch, aren't they? But somehow still 5th. No one in the playoff race seems to be in form at the moment, do they? But Blackburn were one side who had a pretty successful January transfer window, though, Justin. They signed 2 strikers on loan, Emmanuel and Corley Woodrow. An area we've said frequently that they needed to strengthen in, and they've gone and done it, Justin. What do you think about those two?
I do like the signings. Emmanuel Dennis is a very good ball carrier. Corley Woodrow, very experienced at this level. Dennis obviously brings a lot of quality that, he's got a fine form that we've not seen for a while. So there's a bit of risk there. I mean, we're going back several years. I mean, that Watford attack with Ismail Assar, Emmanuel Dennis was just unreal, wasn't it? A few years ago. And if we can get that player, if we can see that player, then we're onto a very good, exciting second half of the season. Corley Woodrow, I do rate as an individual and as a player. He's not had the best luck with injuries since he moved to Luton a couple of seasons ago. And I think if he didn't have those fitness issues, he probably would be a starter for Luton now. But as I say, both are good signings, but both need to find form that we've not seen for a long time.
Yeah, I think Emmanuel Dennis could be a really shrewd move. Of course, he's one of a number of players who are probably regretting ever moving to Nottingham Forest during that spell where they signed half the country. And he's not had much luck since then. But John Eustace is a manager who I think can help him find his best form again, because he scored 10 goals in the Premier League for Watford and ended up moving to Forest for £10 million. So he's obviously a very good player. I just think confidence and fitness are probably lacking with him, but I would back Eustace to get his career back on track. I mean, he's only 27, which surprised me. So given the chance, he could be a great signing for a side like Blackburn. And Woodrow, I agree with you, Justin, hasn't had too much luck in a Luton shirt. But he's got a good record at championship level and is another one who could find his feet again under Eustace. So the two players definitely worth giving a chance to, and considering how Blackburn strikers have been doing recently, they definitely needed to bring in someone in there, and they've brought in 2 players who could definitely click all of a sudden if they're given the chance. So yeah, I'm excited to see how they get on. Justin, let's have a quick break. After that, we'll talk about some more transfer news from the final hours of the transfer window. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. It's time for us to have a look back on transfer deadline day, because the dust has now settled on the window after that window slammed shut. And yeah, there were some deals which we didn't cover. We spoke about kind of the early deadline day deals, didn't we, in the Middlesbrough v Sunderland reaction pod on a Monday night, but there was a few deals which slipped through the cracks after we finished recording, including this one, Justin. West Brom. They've signed Adam Armstrong on loan from Southampton. This move was announced more than 14 hours after the deadline. Apparently all the paperwork had been sorted before then, but it was delayed because it needed approval still. All was fine in the end, though, Justin. You'll be relieved to hear. And I'll tell you what, this is a massive move, isn't it? Because Adam Armstrong in the Championship, reuniting with Tony Mowbray. What were we saying last Friday, Justin? Goals.
Tony Mowbray, Adam Armstrong, goals.
Goals.
That's what we can expect. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful signing. I know. I think if you're a long time listener of the show, I have been critical of Adam Armstrong in the past because he wasn't very clinical. But his spell at Southampton last season, I say his spell, his time at Southampton in Championship last season, I think he really improved that. He was very clinical. He was very effective in that final third, and his goal record at Championship level is just outstanding. It really is. 77 in 232 games at this level is remarkable, really, for a player who, he could have a lot more if he was clinical. And his record under Tony Mowbray was just as brilliant as well. So, yeah, Tony Mowbray, Adam Armstrong, goals, it's happening.
Goals, baby. Yeah, you mentioned there, Justin, 70 goals in 200 odd games. In his last 3 seasons in the second tier, he scored 65 goals in 132 appearances.
Yeah.
A goal every 2 games over a 3-year period is just a remarkable record, isn't it? And that's before you even consider the fact that he also got 13 assists last season for Southampton. So, I mean, you compare that to his Premier League record. He's got 6 goals in 88 Premier League appearances. I think it's about time we induct him into the Dwight Gale Hall of Fame of players who are clearly too good for the Championship but not good enough for the Premier League. But look, West Brom won't care because they're in the Championship, and at Championship level, there aren't many better bagsmen than Adam Armstrong. So it's an excellent get, and I think it will really add a bit of rocket fuel to their playoff push, Justin.
Well, adding Adam Armstrong into that attack is really impressive. One thing we have suggested this season, or spoke about this season, is the underperforming of the attackers around Josh Maja, because that Paul Sart's been carrying the goal threat on his own at the Hawthorns for them this season. So the likes of Jed Wallace, Grady Dean Garn and Mikey Johnson, they've not been quite effective as they've needed to be. And as I say, Tom Fellows and Josh Maja have carried a lot of the attacking burden, but Adam Armstrong comes in and adds a different dimension to their attack. Goal threat, assists, his runs off the ball, his ability to take chances in and around the box as well. He's very confident in doing that. So, yeah, the quality that they've got there is it's a very good signing.
And of course, Josh Maja is out injured and is still going to be out injured for some time. So that's why they desperately needed a striker. And you don't get much better replacements than Adam Armstrong, do you, Justin? Because Adam Armstrong in the Championship, Justin, goals. He's like Gary Goals. Do you remember him?
Who can forget Gary Goals?
Who could forget Gary Goals? I think for anyone who isn't aware of Gary Goals, he
should be.
They should be aware of Gary Goals. How can you not be aware of Gary Goals? So Gary Goals was it was a poster, wasn't it? Someone put a picture on Twitter of a poster which said, "My name is Gary Goals and I will play for your team." Let me just get it up because I was looking at it earlier. Here it is. And the poster basically said, if you call him up, he will come in for your team and score goals for you. And he claims to have scored in every game he's ever played in, scored all types of goals, and he listed free kicks, bicycle kicks and penalties. Also claimed to have had trials at Doncaster United, not Doncaster Rovers, just in Doncaster United, where he apparently played against Wayne Rooney's cousin. So Adam Armstrong is Gary Goals at the Championship level. Both have alliterative names as well, so maybe we're onto something here. Maybe Adam Armstrong has been Gary Goals this whole time.
It's a bit like unearthing the secret footballer, isn't it? We just unearthed Gary Goals.
Yeah, we now know who Gary Goals is. It's good to finally figure it out. Anyway, while we're on West Brom, Alex Palmer has left the club, Justin. He's gone to Ipswich for a reported fee of £2 million. It's meant they've recalled Josh Griffiths from his loan at Bristol Rovers. Still a blow, Justin, because I think Alex Palmer's one of the most solid goalkeepers in the Championship, or was one of the most solid goalkeepers in the Championship. Yeah,
he's been fantastic this season. And I think when we were considering our halfway team of the season earlier on in the year, last month, he was very high on the list, wasn't he? He's been superb for them. So yeah, it is a blow. I think, though, it is a good fee for a goalkeeper who bloomed late in his career. I don't really know when goalkeepers get their chance and run with it. I think Alex Palmer's 25, 26, so fairly old in terms of becoming a first team established first team player at West Brom. But Josh Griffiths, I think, is in around that same age now, and he's had a lot of loan spells out, and he's been at Bristol Rovers this season. I think he's probably ready to make that step up probably a bit of a risk, but West Brom seem happy to take that gamble. So yeah, it is a blow that Palmer's left, but they get a decent fee for him, and they've got good goalkeepers at the club. Joe Wildsmith is there as well, and he's adequate enough, having watched him for 2 years at Derby.
Bristol Rovers fans seem pretty gutted to lose Josh Griffiths, and looking at the underlying data, it appears to be the outstanding keeper in League One. So hopefully he can make the step up to the Champo, because it seems like he's going to be the number one choice going forward. So yeah, a big few months coming up for him. Let's go to Middlesbrough, where they have sold Emmanuel Latte. It's been a bit of a while, hasn't it? Because it's been a willy won't-y situation for some time, but he's now moved to Atlanta United. It's for a reported fee of more than £22 million. It's the most Middlesbrough have ever received for a player. It's also the highest fee ever paid in MLS history. And we've spoken about Lath moving in recent weeks, Justin, but £22 million. I think Middlesbrough played a blinder there.
They have played a blinder. More on that in a moment. I'm just flabbergasted that that's their record income, like the record fee that they've brought in for a player. And you go back years, the likes of Stuart Downing have come through the club, and then you've got
time though, just
yeah, I know, but still 22 million back then wouldn't have been an obscene amount to pay for someone of his quality at that point. It's just slightly astounding, and it's Latte Lath. Sorry, but he's an underperforming forward, isn't he? Very frustrating striker, and they've received £22 million for him. Their negotiations are incredible. I don't like the people who are at the club in that finance department who get the money out of opposition clubs. Is just incredible. They've got up to £5 million for Isaiah Jones as well this transfer window. Chupa Akpom and Morgan Rogers went for 20 million last season, although Rogers in hindsight maybe on the low side. 25 million for Jed Spence and Marcus Tavernier the season before. It's just ridiculous efficiency in negotiating. That should be praised here. And 22 million for Latte Lath is just the whoever's negotiating these deals for Borough should have done the Brexit deal. It's just incredible. It's astounding.
Yeah, you talk about Brexit all the time when you're off the podcast, Justin, but it's about time you finally brought them up on the podcast. Also, thank you for not bringing up the fact that someone on this podcast once said that Middlesbrough have had Aston Villa's pants down for Morgan Rogers, because it's something I get reminded about on a weekly basis on Twitter, which is just great. But let's move on, Justin, because another notable deal on deadline day was Sheffield United signing Rob Holding on loan from Crystal Palace. The Blades had clearly been quite desperate to sign a centre-back. They were linked with Jimmy Dunn of QPR as well as Millwall's Japhet Tanganga, but they ended up getting Rob Holding. A Rob Holding who's only played one game in the last 18 months since moving to Crystal Palace for £4 million. Not sure about this one, Justin.
Neither am I. I think the biggest thing or most impressive thing I could say about Rob Holding is his hairline is just taking an incredible comeback. And I look forward to sort of speaking about that over the next few months, because as a footballer, I think he's left a lot to be desired. I think watching him in big games sometimes for Arsenal, when the likes of Saliba or Gabriel got injured and Arteta cringed a little bit because he just struggled a little bit. Maybe a drop down into the Championship is really going to help, but he's got experience. He's got big game experience, as I just mentioned, so that maybe can translate into the promotion race. But I'd be worried if he'd be starting every game, because the Rob Holding I remember was just a bit of a calamity in the Premier League sometimes.
Yeah, it's a bit puzzling to see how you've gone from Jimmy Dunn to Japhet Tanganga to Rob Holding. Of course, he's an experienced player, played a fair few games for Arsenal over the years, but I always pull a bit of a face when I see a player coming in who's played very few games in a period of time. Having said that, one game in 18 months is a pretty extreme example of even that. And considering the ultimate aim of Sheffield United's desire to find a centre-back was to bring in someone to play alongside Arno Lagbert-Hodzic, is Rob Holding better than Jack Robinson? I'm not really sure he is. Robinson's been pretty solid since coming into the team, and does anyone really know how good Rob Holding is nowadays? But if you're asking him to get up to speed with playing regular football again, you need him to come in and do a job now, really. So I think it's a bit of a strange one. And of course, he was being linked with Coventry not long ago. And even then, I was a bit like, really? Never mind for a top two side, Justin. So yeah, a strange move.
Yeah, I think all it does is just highlight the how tricky it can be navigating the January transfer window. I think Chris Wilder's very good at I wouldn't say unearthing gems, but getting a little bit out of the pros who I wouldn't say at the end of their career, but they need a bit of TLC, and I think a bit of Wilder TLC might help holding a little bit. But I think on paper, when you look at this one, it's one where you just shrug your shoulders and go, meh. But if you can find form, then great. You know, that's an important thing for the Blades, because as we know, the loss of Harry Souttar could be season defining for Sheffield United, because defensively he was just a rock. He was incredible. But is he better than what they've got there at the moment? No, I'd put him down as third or fourth choice if I'm going to be honest.
The final move I wanted to bring to the table, Justin, is one which probably went under the radar for just about everyone, but it has an interesting backstory. It's Zak Lovelace to Millwall. So he came through Millwall's academy and in 2021 became the second youngest player to ever play for them at the age of 15. But he then left to go to Rangers, which was seen as very disappointing by Millwall fans because he was regarded as this very exciting talent. However, 3 years later, having made just 6 appearances for Rangers, he's now back at Millwall, still only 19, by the way. But I thought it was interesting how he departed and is now back where he started. I don't know if you have any strong feelings about this, Justin, because I thought it was quite an interesting backstory.
Yeah, it is an interesting backstory. I think he was a very highly rated prospect, wasn't he, when he went to Rangers? But he's still only 19. Still only 19. And again, I mean, Millwall's recruitment in the January transfer window generally was actually quite positive in terms of the age profile of players they're looking for, taking a little bit of a risk. But their approach is very refreshing from a Millwall point of view, because we've not seen that for a while. But Lovelace, I think, he's obviously very highly rated from the club. Steve Gallen, the director of football, was really, really pleased to get him back in. So it just goes to show how highly they rate him at the Den. So yeah, I think it's just the interesting backstory, the fact that he went to Rangers, not quite worked out, and now he's come back to Millwall. Is he good enough to step up into Championship? Game wise, he's not had enough or played enough games for that to be a convincing story. But that being said, I think Millwall are in a position where they're recruiting slightly differently. Age profile of players is very young, and Lovelace fits that bill. So I'm sure if anyone's going to improve them, I think we've seen it with Ivanovic under Alex Neil. He's really stepped up in the last couple of weeks. Maybe Alex Neil's the man.
Well, there have been rumours of things like homesickness. I don't know how true that is, but it's obviously an awful long way for a player to move at such a young age, having grown up in London as well. But yeah, he probably thought moving to Rangers would be the best step in his career, and it's not worked out that way. And it seemed like he probably would have been best off staying at Millwall, particularly when you see someone like Romain Essa, who's the same age as him, having done what he's done. So it'll be interesting to see how much game time Lovelace gets. As I say, he's still only 19, so still very young, but it does feel like he's having to almost get his career back on track already. So we'll see how he gets on for Millwall and whether he does play that much. But Justin, we now have had the dust settle on the January transfer window. I thought now would be the perfect time to take it all in and look back at who's done well and who's disappointed, who's won and lost the window, if you will. We'll start off with who's won. I did say in our reaction pod off the back of Middlesbrough v Sunderland that I thought Hull were the winners of the window. I explained why then, and nothing's really changed my mind on that front. So that's who I think has won the window. What about you? Who would you say has won the January transfer window?
I mean, I spoke about it in that reaction episode as well, but I do think it's Sunderland. I think that their squad feels strong. It feels balanced. They've not gone out and spent stupid money. I think that's something we can expect sometimes with January transfer windows. Is clubs will panic. They will buy a player for £8 million and they not really have much of an impact. I think one that could fall into that category is Morgan Whittaker at Middlesbrough, but less on that. But I think Sunderland's strategy has been. It's been strategy driven. It's not been gambling. It's not been panicking. They've kept a hold of key players as well. Joe Bellingham, Tom Watson, Dan Neil, all linked with moves away. They all stayed. Enzo Lefebvre came in, arguably the standout signing of the window. He's showing what he can do at this level. Jayden Danns as well on loan from Liverpool, I think is a very smart move. He's an instinctive finisher from watching him in FA Cup action. And I think he's a very good backup to Wilson Isidore, who was also signed permanently in the window. So Sunderland, I think, very, very positive. it'd be very easy for me to say Sheffield United, the players that they signed in attack, but I think when you go out and sign a lot of players in January, brings about certain problems that Sheffield United might be feeling now. So yeah, I think something brilliant.
Yeah. All they needed was just a bit of star quality, didn't they? They didn't need revolution this window, and they've definitely got that in the form of Enzo Latte, haven't they? And a couple more bodies elsewhere too. So yeah, it's not one I would strongly disagree with you on at all just now. I think they've had a great window. One team I wanted to give a mention for, not necessarily having a good window, but I think perhaps having the most intriguing window, is Norwich. Because since their new sporting director came in, Ben Napper, they have been very much going down a data-led approach to recruitment, and that's continued into this window. They spent around £6 million on Mataj Jurasek, who's a 21-year-old Czech winger from Slavia Prague. They've also signed 19-year-old midfielder Jacob Wright on loan from Man City. They've reportedly got the option to sign him for £5 million in the summer, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. They've also spent an undisclosed amount on a 19-year-old centre-back from Brighton called Rory McConville. So it's an ambitious approach, Justin, of signing young players, spending a fair bit of money on these young players. So seeing how they get on will be a curious one, shall we say.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, Norwich have needed a refresh for a while. Obviously, the Daniel Farke team was slowly getting older, and they were slowly being broken apart, and they didn't really refresh. We can all point the fingers at Stuart Webber for that, and I will do, because his ego is ridiculous, and he made a lot of mistakes. Gab Sara left and Johnny Rowe left in the summer, so they needed to replace those. And I think going back to the summer, their recruitment has just been very positive. It's been very clear. The oldest player they signed this season was Emiliano Marcondes at 29. Rest are age 23 or below. So I think there's a very clear approach to what they're doing, and Ben Napper deserves a lot of praise for that. Because I think what we've seen with Norwich is their ability to buy players, improve them, and sell them for a big profit. And I think, that's why they're looking at the market that they are. We've had a lot of success, or we've seen a lot of success with Sunderland doing it. Norwich are trying their way with it. Millwall as well in January done a similar thing. So yeah, I like it. It's very positive.
Yeah, you say he deserves a lot of credit. I think it has got to be pointed out, since Ben Napper's come in, they spent about £20 million on players last summer, mostly from abroad. None of those players they've signed from overseas have done very well so far. So there needs to be an improvement on that front. But they are young players, so they do need time. So I wouldn't say it's all hope is lost just yet. Let's go on to who's had the poorest window, Justin, the loser of the transfer window. There's a few teams who I've got down here, so I'm interested to see who you go for.
Yeah, I think the easiest or the worst one would be to pick Swansea. There are a couple of that have come to mind as well, but Swansea are weaker now, aren't they? I really do feel for Luke Williams. Lewis O'Brien is a very good capture, but it feels pointless when you've lost someone like Matt Grimes and not replaced them, because you've lost your main asset in that midfield, and Lewis O'Brien's a completely different player. But I think a three of Giancarlo Franco, Matt Grimes and Lewis O'Brien is a complete set. It's robust, energetic, good in possession. So not having a replacement lined up for Matt Grimes just feels like a disaster. But also the amount of players that Swansea were linked with and didn't come through the door. Jacob Wright, who went to Norwich, was one. Ethan Galbraith is another. Bobby Clark. I think there's several more actually that they were linked with, but didn't get them through the door. Yeah, just they're so much weaker now. And actually, I really do worry for Swansea, because the mood at the club has dropped significantly. The squad quality has dropped significantly. And Luke Williams and Swansea's form has dropped significantly. So yeah, they're in a very precarious position. Hansdale Croy is another one that they've brought in who's a centre-back, but again, it's not a position that they were desperate for. Yeah, that central midfield area and attack is where they really need to add depth, but centre-back, not a key one. So yeah, Swansea in a bit of bother.
Yeah, they're definitely in a bit of bother, aren't they? Yeah, they were one of the teams I had written down here just now. I've got a few teams who I'll just reel off quickly before I go to my actual loser of the window. Bristol City were one who have literally not signed anyone, so they've got to be given a mention. I'm not necessarily sure they desperately needed anyone though, so I might let them off. Plus, they put out that brilliant explainer on their transfer business, which I thought was great. I'd like to see more clubs do that. Derby, why on earth they've not signed at least two wingers is mind-blowing, because they desperately need one at least, and they've not got anyone. So that's really taken me aback. Luton, I just looked at their business and thought they've spent an awful lot of money for what they've got in return. Plus, this is Luton we're talking about, who are meant to be very smart with their recruitment, and I don't think they very much have been this January. Preston just seem to sign centre-backs. They seem incapable of signing anyone who's not a centre-back. And then Stoke were the other one who I thought could have done with more than just the 2 loan signings they brought in, but obviously their hands are tied by the constant battle with the financial rules that they're trying to stave off. But the one who stood out above the rest for me was Watford. And the main reason for that is because Tom Cleverley's done an unbelievable job this season. He has deserved some backing and he's not got it. I know the Pozzo's not backing Tom Cleverley. Shocking, isn't it? But all they've done is get in 2 players from Udinese. I know Watford getting players from Udinese, shocking, isn't it? And then a lone player from Chelsea. It's just a massive shame because Watford have started to quite significantly drop off. They're still only 3 points off the top 6 though. So if Cleverley was given a bit of support, then maybe they could have pulled off a surprise playoff season. But no, the Pozzos have made it quite clear once again that they're not that interested anymore in Watford. So it's just the same old story with them where the Pozzos just aren't giving Tom Cleverley the backing that he needs. And it seems like this is going to be a recurring theme in every transfer window going forwards. And it's just going to be a struggle for Tom Cleverley getting players in. Justin, I don't know what you think about it.
It's just an unsettled situation. And I think if a club's unsettled, the players are unsettled, the manager's unsettled, it just doesn't feed into anything positive, unfortunately. The Pozzos are a drain on football, especially at Watford. They are an exhausting ownership group, or an ownership family, however you want to coin them. They really are exhausting. So I do feel for Watford fans. I really do, because you want to seek out positivity, and Tom Cleverley is a shining light in an absolute shit show of a football club, mainly down to Gino Pozzo. And like you said, the least he deserved was a little bit of backing, not spare parts at their sister clubs. So yeah, disappointing, frustrating, and like you said, feel for Tom Cleverley in this situation.
And it is worth mentioning as well, when there were reports that Tom Cleverley was being replaced by the former Villarreal manager Pajeta, was it? I think that was his name. There were reports that he was going to get a serious amount of backing to get Watford back into the Premier League. They may have just been reports. There may be no truth to that whatsoever. But it's disappointing that the Pozzos were apparently willing to back him, but not back a club legend like Tom Cleverley, who's been doing a fantastic job. It's a real shame. But that just shows what state Watford are in and why they really could do with having new owners in who actually want to take the club forwards. But there we go. That's been a transfer window roundup of everything happening in the transfer window in general and the final few deals from deadline day. And that's just about it for us here on the Second Tier Podcast. But before we go, just in 5 in 10, name 5 Pixar films.
Up, Big Hero 6, Cars, Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3.
That's all you had to do. You just had to keep naming the Toy Stories. I don't know why you didn't start off with that. Well done, Justin. Well done. I'm glad I kept you on your toes right until the end there, because you've done pretty poorly with your old 5 in 10s recently, but good to see you back in form right at the death.
Yeah, I expect to go on a bit of a dual run now. I seem to win one, lose a few. Bad form. Yeah, sack me.
Pixar films is right in your ballpark, isn't it? So
it's everyone's ballpark.
There we go. And there we go, ladies and gents. This has been the Second Tier Podcast, and we'll be back again tomorrow with the preview show brought to you by SBK as we make some predictions for what is a sparse weekend. We'll say that much because it's the FA Cup this weekend. But there are still a fair few games for us to talk about, so we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.